Good morning. It's Wednesday, 19th of July, about 9 o'clock in the morning. Pretty a timely time to remind myself that only 4 weeks ago, exactly 4 weeks ago today, that the fry in the tank behind me actually started to hatch. And prior to that, I'd actually written the whole spawning off as pretty much a disaster and a non-event. It's been an interesting week since the last video. Back into last week, I think it was Thursday, Friday, I made a post on Facebook because I was thinking of making a selection of the fry purely on a reducing numbers basis, on the basis that there were far more fry than I actually expected in the tank. And I had a feeling, so I mentioned previously that a few had died, we had a few small ones be dying off. I don't know, and something seemed that the growth had seemed to stall a little bit. So the idea last week was, or the thought in my mind last week was that on Sunday we maybe would do a selection to get rid of the smallest ones, the ones which seemed not to be growing at all. But then I did something else on Friday as well. I popped down to Manakoi and picked up 30 bags of Daphnia. My little Daphnia farm here isn't really, I'm using them quicker than I can get them to reproduce. So I put 30 bags of Daphnia in, or probably 15 or 20 went in the tank, 10 went into the growing tanks. And I also made a change to scrap using the finest powder food. And moved up to the larger one, which is the 0.5 to 0.8 millimeters ZM 400 food. So I started to use that exclusively rather than the finer powder food. Over the course of the next 2 days, through to Sunday when I was potentially planning to do the selection, I saw a noticeable jump in size and volume of the fry that were in the tank, of the ones that were really growing properly. So that made me decide to delay the selection process, and I kind of figured that if the smaller ones were not going to grow, they had two chances, or they had a chance to grow or not to grow. If they didn't grow, ultimately they were going up as food for their brothers and sisters, and that would be what it would be, nature's selection process. So that's where I'm at with that. That's continued through the week. We've only been getting that larger food. I've scooped as much Daphnia as I possibly could out of the storage tanks here, or the rearing tanks for the Daphnia, to put into the tank, into the net. There's also some live Daphnia still swimming around in the net, which are too large for the fry to eat. So hopefully they're going to be producing some younger natural food on a regular basis as well. One other thing I did was to change the air in here. I can't remember how the dialogue started, to be honest. I was having a chat with David Baker, who I've mentioned previously on the video, and I mentioned that we'd been down and seen his show of spawn weekend before last. I had air going into air stones going into the net behind me, and it always seemed that if there was one struggling on the surface, a small one, it seemed to be as coming from the air stones. And I had this little feeling that maybe, I don't know, they were getting caught in the airstream, the little fry, the weak ones, lots of strong ones, and that was what was killing them more than anything. So I decided, and I'd mentioned today that I'd thought about moving the air stones out, and funnily enough, he was doing the same thing that very day. And we both noticed exactly the same phenomenon when we did that. And that was the fry stopped hanging on the sides of the tank, or hanging on the sides of the net, and become much more active in the way they were feeding, actually hunting food, as opposed to perhaps waiting for it just to come to them on the sides of the net. Whether that has a benefit or not, who knows? It was funny, one of the things last week, when I posed the question on Facebook about whether I should do a selection or not, one of the replies, which I quite understand, means the same sort of thing here all the time, was why not ask someone in Japan what they would do? And as I've gone around the world in various countries, to the Asian countries, And people talk to me about breeding. They say, oh, can we breed koi in this country? And they ask all sorts of questions about growing fish and developing fish. And we spoke about it as well in Perding Koi Farm, the fact that Scott Perding had to learn how the climate and the mud ponds there worked for growing the fry and developing the koi. This is no different here. If I asked a Japanese breeder what they would do in this situation, it would be an opinion, that's all it would be. And of course it's a very, very valued opinion and a trusted opinion. But it's not something they can talk about from perhaps experience, because they wouldn't be growing a fry in a tank like this. Their tank would be in a mud pond outside. And I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's a timely reminder about these are only 4 weeks old. I think I'm starting to see my friends, the breeders in Japan, starting to do selection of fish that have maybe been out a week or so longer than these in the mud ponds, 5-week-old fry, 6-week-old fry. And I'm kind of getting itchy feet that I want to get going and start doing the same thing. But it's a different situation. Those fish that have been out in the mud ponds have had much, much greater space to be growing and developing. And these are starting to get there. As we can see from these fry here, we're starting to see colour changes among particularly the black fry, particularly evident. If you look very closely at some of the white fry, you can see colour change as well. So that's good. We also see, you can probably see on the video, just the flecks of bright shine on the eyelids of some of the fish, which I'm taking as a sign of their metallic luster. But I'll learn more about that as we proceed through the selection process. I'm going to put some of these in the bowl in a little while. But once they're in the bowl, you can't really see the colour difference so easily. It's much easier to see against the dark colour, the dark water of the tank, to see that colour change and that shine that some of them have. And these ones in the bowl are kind of the average size of what's in the net. There's smaller ones in there, and as I say, they take their chance, and we'll see what happens. So as far as the tank's concerned, the selections, for now it's just continue as we're going, keep feeding this the ZM400 food, and say the smaller ones will drop off, and if they don't drop off, they grow, and if they have some quality when it gets to the selection process, they may be kept as part of that selection process, and time will tell. Other thing that I mentioned last week on the video was the start of the growing some green vegetables, which is potentially going to be part of an aquaponics thing, which I'd like to start developing in conjunction with the koi. I have to say, green vegetables, lettuce seem to grow a lot more consistently and quicker in size than baby koi do. And we've also grown that a lot, planted a whole load of other stuff as well. The next ones that went out were coriander and some basil, which went into the pots back in the last week, and also these little green mixed green salad vegetables, which are growing really well. And then yesterday I put a whole load of other stuff out, some pak choy, some more lettuce, some watercress. So interested to see how they continue to germinate. Certainly all seems good at the moment, and eventually they all end up in a floating raft on the top of the tank to continue their growth, and I have another tank coming which will go outside and hopefully be fed by the water from the paddling pool that's outside. As all part of the experiment of seeing what grows and what doesn't grow and what grows quickly and that kind of thing. So that's where we're at with the green vegetables and the aquaponics, as I like to call it, gardener's greens. One of the other things that was going to come as a consequence of doing selection in the tank, and one of the possibilities, one of the options that I was pondering last weekend, was that what would happen is that the youngest or the smallest of the fry, so a number, maybe 2,000 or 3,000, the larger size, the regular size, would stay in the net here. Smaller ones would go into the paddling pool outside. That paddling pool was originally there, obviously to keep the males and females apart. And if there was baby fish going in it, that would mean the males and females had to go together. That is what's happened. The paddling pool is now empty, as you can see. But I can't help but I fancy having a go at a second spawning. It's very possible, maybe after the BKKS National Koi Show that takes place this weekend, so I'm away this weekend at that, maybe next Monday, if the koi haven't started spawning in the pond, which they're not showing any signs of doing at the moment, I may well do a sort of sneaky little small spawning, and it's definitely going to be a small spawning, and it'll be of the Aoki Benikika Kuryu female, and it'll be I have a plan that what I will do, so Aoki-san would do Kuroko selection, keeping the black babies from his Benikika Kuryu, and that's what I would be planning to do. I'm going to keep a very small number of black Benikika Kuryu babies, maybe just 1,000 or 2,000 if we're lucky to get that many hatch. Keep those, grow them. I have two benefits of doing that. The fish is spawned in a controlled manner, so she's not beaten up too much by males in the main pond. So she releases her eggs, which is also a benefit to her if we're going to use her as a female in the future. And I get to see how or what maybe comes from her as a pairing with the male Benikika Kuryu we used already in the spawning or earlier. So it's in my mind, very much in my mind. My head probably says I don't need to do it. My heart says, oh, what? Why not? What the hell? I know that these numbers are going to come down fairly soon, once we start doing selection in maybe 2 or 3 weeks' time. And then I'll be able to juggle, as long as I keep those new babies separate in some kind of net in the paddling pool. They're not going to go as quick, and we'll just see where we go. So that's where we're at. All pretty good, feeling happy at the moment with where things are going. Let's say 4 weeks ago today, these babies were just hatching, so pretty exciting to be where we are at the moment.